Hello, and welcome to the live stream event. We're going to discuss, on raising the intelligence of the student. So thank you so much for joining me today. Now I'm going to go over some materials covered in the study handbook, Principles and Techniques for Effective Learning. Okay, and today, I'm going to discuss intelligence a little bit. We'll start with like, what does intelligence consist of? Because there's a lot of opinions in this field, but I'm going to use a politically incorrect term, because in order to discuss intelligence, you also have to discuss unintelligence, And what is unintelligence? Well, normally we refer to it as stupidity, okay? But now let's not use this as a bad word, okay? Let's actually give stupidity a technical definition, okay? Let's define this very clearly, right? Because if you can define stupidity or the term stupidity and give it a clear definition, you'll see how you can resolve these things, okay? So I'm going to start by defining stupidity, and I would simply say that stupidity is not knowing something, okay? And I'm sure you've seen examples in life where you go, oh, that person is stupid, right? What are you really saying? You're saying that person doesn't know something about the subject. That's all you're saying, right? But now that we've defined this, now that we've defined this, we can go, okay, well, stupidity, if that simply means not knowing something, well, then it's fixable, right? Because anything which you can accurately define and know more about, you can fix, okay? So now that we have that term stupidity defined as not knowing or unknowingness or not knowing enough about something, okay, now we can work on fixing that, okay? Because all you have to do to fix that is to add the missing information. So I would actually say there is no person who is stupid. There's only people with missing information, and that's something that can be fixed. Okay, so let's go a little deeper into this, okay? So because many subjects in school, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining again. Like many different pupils have problems with different subjects. One could say they are stupid or lack information in a particular subject. And you'll find students complain saying, oh, this subject is really hard, right? So what's underneath all of this? What's underneath all of this? Why is a subject really hard for one student and not for another? Well, it actually all has a common root, right? It has a common root. When a person is unable or has a hard time with a subject, underneath all that is what we call a misunderstood word or an incorrectly understood word, okay? And now this may sound very simple, and actually it is quite simple, but it goes so deep, you understand. I've taught in Africa, I also do volunteering work in Africa. I have a learning center over here. I've done projects in South America. I've done them in the United States. I actually went to the Mayo College in Ajmer, which is one of India's top boarding schools. But each time I end up discussing this same principle, because I ask for the students that are having a rough time or having difficulties, right, with any subject. And all we do is we look for what words they have misunderstood in a subject, okay? And now let's go into this a little deeper. What does a misunderstood word do in a mind, right? Because quite frankly, your mind, any student mind, is actually in very good working order. But a mind, your mind can only work or function as good as the information that is inside of it, okay? So if you give somebody wrong information, they make mistakes, okay? If you give them the correct information, they will do it right. Now, in study, when you're studying or when students are studying, the whole purpose of study is to gain information, but that information needs to be correct, okay? When a student or anybody for that matter has a wrong meaning for a word, okay, then the text on the page is not entering in the mind correctly. Again, this sounds very simple, right? But I tell you, I go to schools, I go to universities, and I ask people, what subject do you have the most hard time with? And some will say maths, some will say geology, geography, science, whatever it is. Okay. Well, the student, that says, I have trouble with math, I usually ask them, okay, well, tell me, what is the meaning of the word math? Okay. Or what is the meaning of the word geography? And you'll find out that the student who has a hard time with the subject can usually not even explain the meaning of the subject he is studying. Okay. Because this is a misunderstood word. And misunderstood words are the only things that block understanding, right? There are certain private schools around the world, a network of private schools, that I visit every now and then. The students there, they have 100% passing rate in their classes, right? And their passing rates are 85%, right? If they score less than 85%, they flunk, right? Sounds terrible, but 100% of the students passes, okay? And they pass without stress. Why? Because in those school systems, in that private school network, they don't allow students to go past words they don't understand. Now, one of the mistakes that is made in education these days, in a lot of public schools, a lot of schools in the United States, in England, all over the world, right? This is not a problem just for India. This is a problem all over the world. When a student is reading a text, we tell them, if you find a word you don't know the meaning of, you look at the word around it and see if you can figure this out, right? See if you can figure out the meaning from the text. And sure, this is possible to a certain degree. You can figure out the meaning of of a word from the text, right? You can get a pretty good idea. The problem is, it's a pretty good idea, right? And you can do this experiment in a classroom or with a few friends. You all take a word you don't know the meaning of, right? And you look at it in a text, and everybody goes, okay, figure out the meaning. Well, if you're 10 people, you will get 10 different meanings. Everybody will figure out their own meaning, right? You can't do that. No matter what subject you're studying, you can't invent your own meanings. Yet that's what we're telling students to do. So when you invent your own meaning, you feel pretty good for a while, but if you don't have the exact right meaning, and that can only be found in a dictionary, the subject will become a little bit confusing, okay? The subject will become a little bit confusing. So when we observe classes, the longer they go on, you sometimes get students who actually do worse and worse and worse and worse, not better, 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 better. What's going on over here? Well, they've misunderstood something in that class, in their subject, a word. You follow? And whenever you have a misunderstood word in a text, a misunderstood word acts like a hidden confusion in your mind. It's something you're not certain of, okay? So when you're reading a complex text, you run across a word you don't understand, you try and figure it out a little bit, and you say, okay, I have a pretty good idea. Now you continue studying a little long, and there's another word you're not sure of. So these confusions, these words act like hidden confusions in your mind, okay? Now, after you have many misunderstood words in a text, what's going to happen is you're going to start not liking the subject. You're like, this is a confusing text, right? I hate this subject. This subject is not for me, or I never wanted to study this subject in the first place, okay? That's kind of what's going to happen. But it's not because the subject is actually confusing. It's because you've built up and stacked up many, 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 many uncertainties and misunderstood words, okay? And again, I keep, mentioning the misunderstood word, right? It's a word you don't understand or have a wrong meaning of, right? And there's actually 10 different ways you can misunderstand a word. It's not just like, oh, I have no idea what that word means, right? That's one of the ways you can misunderstand a word, but there's 9 more ways. And I'm going to cover that a little bit later, in this online, lecture here. However, again, every misunderstood word acts like a confusion in the mind, and you stack up more and more and more and more. And actually, your ability to understand and think with a subject or intelligence goes down, 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 okay? Now, this is so much the case that intelligence is actually directly related to the amount of misunderstood words a person has, okay? Thank you for joining us. And this is actually a discovery that was made in the 60s. And for some reason, it's not very well known yet, right? But you have to understand that, if you're reading a text, let's take a computer. If you add a computer and you put a piece of wrong information in the computer, it will give you a wrong result, right? Now, computers are, people are much smarter, and the mind is much better than any computer can ever be designed, right? So in the human mind, this is a little harder to detect, right? But a bit of wrong information in a computer or a calculator will give you a wrong result, right? This is obvious. Well, likewise in the student, right? If he has a bit of wrong information, he's going to give a wrong answer, okay? And if the answer is a little bit wrong, then the answer, will still make sense. If the information that the student has is really wrong, then his answers will make no sense at all. If his information is 50% right, his answer will be 50% right. If his information is 75% right, his answer will be 75% right, okay? I mean, this is very simple logic here. Problem is when you get to the English language, and a lot of people are in India, studying English, which is fine. It's a little ironic, since Sanskrit, and actually all knowledge of the world originally comes from India and the Indus Valley, right? Thousands of years ago, it's the Indus Valley and India that moved knowledge to the West, okay? And now for some reason, a lot of people here studying English, and that's fine, as long as you realize that English is just a trade language, right? The original science language is Sanskrit and the Devanagari. Anyways, English gets a little extra confusing, right? Because English is a bit of a complex language. And this is why I keep, this misunderstood word concept is so important to understand. And I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the English language so you understand why English can be so confusing, okay? English is a mix of languages, right? And it's because the England, or the British Empire, only became an empire really, really late in history. In about 50 before Christ, the time of the Romans conquered England, what is now England, and they stayed there for 500 years. And only in the year 500 after Christ did they leave. Now, the moment they left, the Anglo-Saxons moved in, and that became the base of the English language. But that's about 500 BC, or AD. Sorry, AD. At the same time, you have the Vikings from Scandinavia. They then conquered England. Okay. So now all of a sudden you have Scandinavian or Swedish or Norse, Old Norse, being forced into the English language, because the Vikings ruled parts of England for about 500-600 years, right? And then finally, when the Vikings started leaving, then the Normans, right? And this is Norman from France, Normandy, and different from Norsemen, which was the Viking. So once the Vikings left, now the Normans, the French, came over to England and conquered England. And they stayed in England for about 400 or 500 years, right? And finally, in the 15th, 16th century, did the British or the English finally kind of gain their own independence. But during that time period, they had Latin, they had French, and they had Scandinavian thrown into the English language, because they've been conquered so many times by so many different other people. Okay, so when you speak English these days, you're actually speaking a mix of 3-4 basic languages, including Indo-European, which traces its roots right back to India and Sanskrit, right? So you will find Hindi words as part of the basic English language. Anyways. So English gets really sneaky, where we have these words like bat. Right? Take the word bat, right? Cricket bat, right? It's a stick. But we also have a meaning for the word bat, which is the animal that flies through the air, okay? And you wonder, how can the same word, mean an animal that flies through the air, and a stick, right? That you use to hit a ball with. Well, it's because they're actually from two different languages, right? The bat that flies through the air comes from Scandinavian. It's a Viking word, right? And it was forced into the English language when the Vikings ruled England. Later on, the Normans, the French, came along, who had the word bat, which comes baton, right? Which means stick, right? So the Normans, ruled, the French ruled in England for about 400 or 500 years. So they forced all these French words. And the fact that the Scandinavian word bat and the French word bat sound the same is coincidence, but the words are unrelated. So in English, you get this trick where you get a word that actually has many different meanings, and they're wildly different. Okay, it's because they actually come from different languages. Okay, and that's what makes the English language particularly complex at times, right? Because it's such a mix. Okay, so back to this whole point of misunderstood words. Okay, like, how do you raise the intelligence of the student? Well, intelligence goes down when you have a confusion, right? And a word that is not correctly understood adds a little confusion in the mind. It's kind of invisible, you know what I mean? Because you can't look into a student's mind and see, okay, what are all his confusions, right? You can only see what's happening, like, he's failing his tests. Okay, well, the way we resolve this is we take the student and we start finding his misunderstood words, okay? Because again, it's never a sentence, a paragraph, or page that is misunderstood. It's individual words that are not understood. And that's what blocks understanding, okay? In some schools in Africa, a test was done at one point in time. They were testing the IQ, and they found that year after year after year, the IQ went down, 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 right? Just worsening test scores, right? But what we're finding, well, the quality of teaching, in those particular schools it's like the teachers were trying hard, but they didn't understand this phenomena of misunderstood words. And once a student gets stuck, they just push over it. They push over it and say, keep up with the lesson, keep up with the lesson, keep up with the lesson, keep up with the subject, right? And like, okay, just read it again, read it again, read it again. Well, I'm telling you, you can read a text 100 times. If you have a word or several words you don't know the meaning of in that text, if you don't go to a dictionary and find out what the meanings of those words are so you can understand the text, it doesn't matter how many times the student reads it, he is not going to understand the text, okay? So we have a whole different principle of study, that we apply at Clarity Learning Centers or with our charity, where instead of making a student go over a text again and again and again when he's failing, we start finding or doing detective work to find out what words in the text he doesn't understand. And something amazing happens, okay? And you have to try this yourself, right? But the moment you start finding the words that the student doesn't understand, it's the words, not the sentence, the words, okay? And you make sure that the student has a good, correct understanding of the words in a text. All of a sudden, that student will start to understand that text. All of a sudden, he will start to remember what's on the page, right? If there's no understanding, you need to use forced memory in order to pass a test. However, if you understand a principle or a subject, the information is automatically available. So by focusing on understanding of a text or a subject, you're going to get much better test scores from your students and much better results. Now, how do you get understanding? Well, quite simply, the moment the student understands every single word in a text, magically somehow they understand the subject, okay? And again, you have to apply this yourself, because it sounds too simple to be true. Except I've done it hundreds of times, thousands of times, you understand? We do it all the time. We take dyslexic students. What's a dyslexic student? A dyslexic student is a student who has so many misunderstood words. There's so many words in the text that he does not know the meaning of, does not have the right meaning of, that he can't read, okay? Nothing makes sense to him on the page, right? And the simple fact behind that is that he has too many misunderstood words. Okay. That's a misunderstood word. A misunderstood word is a hidden confusion in the mind, and each hidden confusion in the mind lowers intelligence slightly, right? So by finding those hidden confusions and clearing them up, making them understood, you can actually raise intelligence bit by bit by bit, okay? Now, I'm going to put some text on a page because I said earlier, there's 10 different ways you can misunderstand a word or not have a correct understanding of a word. And I want to go over that with you all because a misunderstood word is not just something you don't know the meaning of. That's a very limited understanding. That one is obvious. Everybody knows when they don't know the meaning of a word. But let's look at some hidden forms of a misunderstood word that the student actually needs a teacher in order to find them, okay? Because these are very hard for the students to find. And I'm going to share my screen over here and put put a little tab on. So, misunderstood word, okay? It's one of the primary barriers to study. We're all somewhat familiar with it, but there's 10 different ways of having a misunderstood word, okay? So let's look at some of these misunderstood words. So first, you can have a totally wrong meaning for a word. For example, if you think the word box means cats, that's a totally wrong meaning, and it will have strange results. You've seen this every now and then in life. You ask somebody, go get me a pair of scissors, or you ask them to get something for you, right? And they come back with something different than you asked them to get. Well, right there, you're looking at the in-life phenomena of somebody having a completely wrong meaning for a word. It's a wrong definition, okay? Teachers will also have experienced this in classrooms, especially in science classroom. You tell them to get a science object and they come back with something else. There, it's quite obvious that the student has a wrong definition, because if he knew what the right thing was, if he had the right meaning for what you asked for, he would have come back with the right object, okay? So that's having a totally wrong meaning for a word, okay? Second way you can misunderstand, you might make up a wrong meaning, or someone might tell you a made-up meaning, okay? So this is what we call an invented definition, right? And this is one of the most frequent type of misunderstoods that students have, okay? They sit there reading a text and they get they see a new word they've never seen before. And instead of looking it up in a proper dictionary to get the exact meaning, as they should as students, they go, oh, let me figure out the meaning from the text. And they make up their own meaning, okay? Here's a little experiment you can do, right? And this is terrible. This is really horrible for a class, ask your class, okay, what is the meaning of the word alphabet, okay? And at the same time, write down the meanings on a blackboard, and as you ask the students, don't give them the right answer, but you will find out you will get 10 or 15 different meanings for the word alphabet, okay? It's amazing. But it's a real-life demonstration of students making up their own meanings for a word in an effort to understand the subject, right? I've asked teachers the meaning of the word alphabet, right? English teachers in England and the United States, and they've given me the wrong answer. You follow? Like the invented definition or the made-up definition is so prevalent in schools, it will blow your mind, okay? And when people are making up their own meanings for words, they will not understand the subject, they will fail your class, okay? This is the most dangerous one, because when you invent your own meaning, everybody thinks they're the smartest, especially teenagers, but also adults, you know what I mean? Everybody thinks they're the smartest. So when they've made up their own meaning and it makes sense to them, they're really stuck with that meaning, okay? And it will be totally wrong in a lot of cases, right? So a lot of your failing students just have a lot of invented meanings. And when they look it up in a dictionary, they're in shock. They're in shock as to what the actual word means. I was at Ashmere and Mayo College, and the student couldn't understand organic chemistry. You understand? And the reason he couldn't understand organic chemistry is that for him, chemistry meant synthetic subjects or synthetic materials, right? That was his made-up meaning for the word chemistry. Anything to do with synthetic materials. So organic chemistry could not exist as a subject in his mind, right? And thus he was failing at the subject of organic chemistry. The moment we gave him the right meaning for chemistry out of the dictionary, his whole study problem resolved in that subject, okay? So an invented meaning can act as a major roadblock to understanding and intelligence. All right, so next, you can have a meaning that is not right, but has something in common with the right meaning. This can happen if you think an orange is a lemon, or, both are fruit. So this is another frequent ways people have misunderstood words. They're almost right, right? They're almost right. Another example would be if you think well, let's take a car. A car is a car, and there are different types of car. You can have a Ferrari and you can have a Lamborghini, right? Those are different cars. But to a student, a Ferrari could be a Lamborghini, or a Lamborghini could be a Ferrari. If he doesn't actually know the difference, that acts as a misunderstood word, right? Or if he thinks an apple and a pear are the same. Still, both fruit, again, it will block his understanding. It will reduce his ability to think in a subject, okay? Next, you might have an incomplete definition. You simply don't have enough information about a word. And this is another thing that happens frequently with students. They kind of have an idea of what the word is, but not enough. Okay, the example here, if you knew a peacock was a bird, but, and that's all you know, okay, yes, a peacock is a bird, right? But it's not a complete, it's just lacking information, because a pigeon is also a bird, right? And a sparrow is also a bird, right? They are very different, right? So that's, another way of just not having enough information. And especially in science, math, chemistry, physics, you're using very exact definitions, and if a student doesn't have enough of a precise enough or complete enough definition, he is going to get lost, okay? The other next one is some words have more than one meaning, okay? So here you may, and this is very common in the English language, all right? Take the word to, okay? T-O. It's one of the most simplest words in the English language, right? It's also the most misunderstood word in the English language. The word to, T-O, has 30 separate meanings in English, okay? Look to the wall. To over there means in the direction of. I'm going to New York. To over there means destination. It is 5 minutes to 7. To now means before, okay? I'm going to work, to work. My destination, the first to is my destination is work, and then to work. Now the next to means for the purpose of, I'm using this hammer to hammer a nail for the purpose of, right? This is a simple word like to, right? It has 30 separate meanings. And it changes based on the context of how it's used, right? So here you have a word with more than one meaning. But there are many words in the English language that have more than one meaning. So if a student has one meaning of a word, but not one of the other ones, again, he will have the wrong concept when he's trying to study something. And again, he will feel stupid. All right, and he will look stupid when he answers something, when in fact it's not. He's just missing one bit of information, okay? So next, you can have a meaning for a word that's really the meaning for a different word that sounds the same. And again, this is particularly in English. If I say to, or to, you have no idea which word to I'm using. The first to, T-O, 1-O, O, or the second to, with two O's, you can't hear the difference, right? Or two, the letter two, TWO. All words sound the same, and you have to hear them in a sentence. And the student can think one word is another word when it's not, okay? So that's really what we call a homonymic definition, where two different words sound the same, like the word bat, the animal, and the word bat, a cricket bat. That's a homonymic. It's a homonym. The two words sound the same, but they're completely different words, and they have their own dictionary entrances. Okay. All right. So sometimes two words have the almost same meaning, but they don't mean exactly the same thing. Okay, here, this is really a synonym, right? And again, English is full of synonyms. And the problem with synonyms is, like, a synonym is almost the same, but it doesn't mean quite the same. So, so you take big, large, huge, gargantuan, enormous, gigantic, all of those words have to do with the concept of something being of great size, right? But they also mean something different. Like gargantuan is not the same as big, right? Gargantuan is like enormously big, right? Enormous is of astounding size. It's not big, right? So when students like replace one word for another word, or use a synonym, or think it's the same, that's another way a word gets misunderstood. And especially in science, this is a problem. All right. Now, okay, in English, again, some words have more than one meaning. Okay. Let's take the word critical, right? Critical can mean being very precise, attention to detail, but it can also mean finding fault with someone, right? And severely judging someone. Well, those are two completely different meanings for the same word. And if you only knew the meaning of critical, of finding fault with someone, and there's another meaning of critical, meaning very important. It's critical that you pay attention to the class. That sentence does not make sense if you don't know the meaning of critical being very important. If you only know the meaning that, to judge severely or find fault with, the student may end up with a concept, well, like, oh, I should find everything wrong with the teacher, right? If he has only one of the meanings of that word. All right. Next, we have a no definition. You may not have a meaning for a word at all. Well, that's simple. You come across the word and you go, wow, I have no idea what that means. That's the easy one. That's the easy one to spot. And that's the one everybody is more or less aware of. When they're studying, they're like, oh, I have no clue what that means. That's the one time that a student, has a chance at catching, when he has a misunderstood word. And finally, sometimes there's an emotional upset related to a word, that for some reason he doesn't want to know anything about the word. He doesn't want to learn about the word because there's emotional upset connected to the word. Doesn't happen often, but it does occur. Okay. So those are your 10 ways of misunderstanding a word. And as an educator, as a tutor, even as a student, very important to know those 10 different ways, right? Because that's going to allow you to fix a student who's having a hard time with a subject. Okay. Now, let's cover the next concept, right? How do we fix a misunderstood word, right? Because it's one thing to say, open a dictionary, fine, but how do you actually fix it so that that a word is clearly understood? Well, like any subject, if you want to be good at something, you have to use it, you have to practice it, right? So there's an exact way you go about fixing with a student, or even yourself, when there's a word that's not understood, in order to make it easily understood in the mind. We call this word clearing. And the clear here means free from error or easily understood. Okay. And I'm going to share my screen again so you can get a step-by-step, because this procedure we find works really well at sorting out the confusions in a student's mind, finding his hidden misunderstoods and then fixing it so that they can understand the subject. Okay. And here we go. Oops. Do I have? For some reason, okay, it doesn't seem to want to share right now. Try this one more time. Okay, well, maybe I'll just go to my entire screen and see if I can. Pop this up. Okay. So understanding words. So one of the ways of detecting when a person has gone past a word they don't fully understand is you will actually see some mental and physiological and psychological phenomena, right? And as teachers, you'll recognize this, when a student goes past a word he doesn't fully understand, and that includes any of those 10 methods that I just went over, you will see him start to, he will feel blank, and you can literally see that blank look in their eyes. I'm sure you've talked to people and you've said something, and all of a sudden they got that blank look in their eyes, right? And you're like, wow, this person is not understanding what I'm saying. Right there, you just mentioned a word that the student doesn't understand. The student will feel washed out, meaning lacking energy, he may feel not there, start daydreaming, or, we always refer to this as teachers, oh, he's not paying attention in the class. Okay, well, that person has misunderstood. You have the student that is always nervous and upset, or nervous and upset with a subject. That person has misunderstood. Those are like sure signs that that person has misunderstood. When they get too many misunderstoods, they start to dislike the subject. Then they complain about the teacher. They complain about the school. They complain about the class. They complain about the subject. It's actually none of those things. They're full of misunderstoods on that subject, right? And it's kind of unfair that, the student goes by misunderstoods and then they blame the teacher, but that's an actual mental phenomena that occurs. They start disliking and complaining about the subject, the teacher, and anything related to it, okay? Tells you there's misunderstood words. All right, so how do we go about fixing a misunderstood word? There's an exact way we do this. Go to the... Okay, so let's say you take the word alphabet, right? You found a word that the student doesn't understand. Okay, well, we have to find the word in a dictionary. Now, because most words have more than one meaning, we look at the text where the word is being used, and the very first thing we do is we have the student find the meaning that fits in the text, okay? Then he reads that definition, and we make sure he understands it. Now, the next thing, and this is very important, we have the student make sentences with the word. Why do you do this? Well, If you can't make sentences with the word, you don't understand it, right? And you'll see that if you ask a student to make a sentence with a new word, you're actually practicing the use of the word. You make 10 or 15 sentences, all of a sudden you'll see the student light up and go, oh, I know how to use this word, right? You have now added that word to the vocabulary. If you just quickly read the definition, you're going to momentarily understand it, but you're not going to understand it well enough because you haven't used it. And tomorrow you'll have forgotten. If you take the time to make 10, 15 sentences until you can use the word easily, you have now added it to the vocabulary and made it clear in the students' minds, okay? Good. And once you've done that definition that fits, you have to do the same for all the other meanings in the word, right? So if a word has 5 meanings, you'd have them read each meaning and make sentences with each of the different meanings until the entire word is completely understood. And the funny part is you'll see a student brighten up. You'll see them, look smarter, literally, and gain understanding, right? Next thing you do, after he's read all the, studied up on all the definitions, you look at the derivation. Why? Well, knowing where the root of a word comes from will help you understand, okay? Let's take a word like architect, right? Okay, an architect is somebody who designs houses. Very good. All right, but it comes from arch, and tektos, right? Which is a Greek word. So arch means principle, tektos or tekton, builder, right? That's the root of the word. So architect comes from the Greek words principal or most important builder. It's the guy that designed the house. Knowing the root of the word gives you an extra clarity on the word, okay? Then if the dictionary has any further explanations in it about how to use the word, you study that. Okay, that's the procedure for clearing a word, okay? And again, this maybe sounds very simple, right? Well, all basic truths are very simple, okay? You have to actually use this in class. You have to use this in experience because you will not believe how powerful this is until you've used it for a while, okay? At our learning centers, at our charity centers, we take dyslexic kids, right? Kids that can't study. All we do is find their words. We go back to where they were last doing well, and we find out where they lost it. And we start working on their vocabulary. We find the words they don't understand. We make it so they understand those words. And magically, the students' IQ starts to come up, their intelligence comes up, they start passing their classes, and they're no longer on forced memory, okay? You can literally take a dyslexic student, because all a dyslexic student is a student that has so many misunderstood words that nothing that he reads on a page makes sense to him, okay? There's just too many misunderstood words. Your average student, they don't have as many misunderstood words, right? And the problem with college and university professors, the problem you have is you get a student that you expect knows the vocabulary, right? Except he's never been taught to clear his words in dictionaries. So he's already studied a few years making up and inventing all his own meanings for words from the text, right? So of course he is completely lost in a subject, because if you're going to invent your own meanings for words in your textbooks, you might as well say, well, then invent the subject yourself. Don't bother coming to school, right? School is for learning, but part of that discipline from the two students' perspective is he's got to know what the words mean, right? And I will tell you, ask a student, what's the meaning of the word to, right? What's the meaning of the word to? See how many students can answer just that one question, TO, right? You'll maybe get one meaning, but nobody will, they'll think, right? And you'll see this long pause, right? You'll see this long pause, and that long pause demonstrates how much thinking and effort and confusion is in that student's mind, right? And it actually shows you nicely the hidden confusion, right? Student having trouble with physics, well, what's the meaning of the word physics, right? Or what's the area of physics that he is having trouble with? Ask for the words. Ask him to define the terms. You will find out that he can't, okay? And the moment that he clears them up in a dictionary and can, you will see understanding of that subject return, okay? Okay, that's the basic message. I can say, talk about this for hours. There's a lot more. There's actually 10 different ways of detecting misunderstood words in a student. But I'm telling you, use these methods, you can get a dyslexic student who is stupid and unintelligent. And I don't believe in those terms, by the way. I'm just using them because I have to. You'll get them able to read and literate, okay? And next time, you have a class, do this little test, Say, hey, I want you to go through that chapter or a page, and write down all the words you don't understand the meaning of. And just have them make a list. They can circle it or they can make a list, right? Don't even have them study the page yet or the chapter. Just have them first go through and make a list of all the words that they don't know the meanings of. Then send them to find out the meaning of all those words, right? Until they understand all the words. Now have them read the chapter. What are you going to find? All the students that actually honestly do that exercise are going to find that chapter really easy to read, okay? It's quite a fantastic breakthrough in education, actually. It's not the subject, it's the words of the subject, right? Another way to apply this is to make what we call a keyword list. This is great for professors and teachers, right? Before you start your semester or before you start the subject, make a list of all the important words, the key words, the most important words of the subject that you are teaching. And make sure every student has like a thorough understanding of those key words of the subject, okay? You do that, you're gonna find out your class is gonna do much, much better, okay? It's gonna do, you're gonna find the test scores go up. Why? Because you're taking confusions out of the minds, and the confusions are words and lacking proper meanings. They're not the subject, okay? I can't stress this enough. You're gonna have to find this out for yourself, Please feel as skeptical, disbelieve me as much as you want to, but give it a shot, okay? Give it a shot. And contact us. You're very welcome. Thank you. I'm reading some of the comments. Thanking, and I'll sum it all up, right? Intelligence, stupidity. I don't believe in stupidity, right? Because stupidity is only, not knowing something, right? It's missing information. So yeah, we all miss information on a subject, okay? But intelligence is related to words, okay? Because every unknown or incompletely defined word is a confusion in the student minds. And most students, by the time they're 15, 16, 17, and they're in your college, they have hundreds, if not thousands of words that they are uncertain of. So they lack confidence, they lack eloquence, they lack certainty, right? And every word you make fully understood, so they can use it, you give them a little bit of certainty back, and a little bit of certainty, do this for a week with a class. Just find words they don't understand and clear them. Watch them change. Watch them change. All right? Namaskar. Thank you so much for attending. I can be reached through Unique Coaching. If you have any question, thank you so much, Vipul, for setting this all up. And again, all my respect to every teacher on this channel. Governments rise and fall, kings come and go. Without the teacher, there is no civilization. My deepest respect for everybody in this field. Thank you so much. All right. Have a wonderful evening.